chance to make it 28-3. Arthur Blank loving it. Up by 25. Toss to White. He's in! What a comeback!
All right, you're here on the 28-3 podcast, episode 2. You're here with Corey, Max, and Nick. All right, guys, let's get into some topics. First thing I'm thinking about, NFL owners meeting is probably the only thing going on of note right now. You know, pretty dull time in the offseason. The draft's still a little bit of ways away. But there were some nuggets that came out of the owners meeting. I mean, you had Dennis Allen talking about Mike Thomas. You had some rules that were approved by the owners. Some of them are not bad. But then there's others that I hate that maybe Max doesn't, and maybe Nick kind of feels like meh about. But you know, Max, what do you think about those?
Well, the two that are really catching my attention, one is the cut down. So we're going to one singular cut down after the third preseason game, and it's going to go from 90 to 53. I love this. The multiple cut down days never made any sense to me. I'm a big fan of this adjustment.
But there's so much more drama for Hard Knocks when there's multiple times of cut downs.
I guess I'll be honest with you. I've never seen an episode. Doesn't interest me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't watch it either. But I mean, I've saw a couple clips, and you know, they have multiple more rounds to say, well, we gotta talk to this guy. But everybody knows the end of that story when someone wants to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you this though, the one that excites me, and it's not as important as any of the rule changes, but the number 0, I love it. College rolled it out, I think 2 seasons ago. I think the number 0 is a really cool looking number, and I'm excited to see Darnell Washington hopefully rocking that number for the Saints.
Yeah,
Calvin really picked it for the Jacksonville.
Yeah, you led me right into that with Big O, with Darnell. I mean, look, this is a Saints pod. I'm a diehard Saints fan. I've even got my Hudak card from 1987, but I did go to college at the University of Georgia, so...
Were you alive in 1987?
Yeah, I was. Thanks. I was actually in the Dome
just checking.
in 1987. But, you know, as a couple homer takes here, I do want to see Big O from UGA drafted by our Saints, and if he is, and he's not wearing number 0, there will be a problem.
Agent 0, baby.
So I'm happy about that rule change.
Are we getting into the draft?
No, okay. Not yet. We'll get into the draft in the week, 2 weeks before the actual draft. We'll have an offensive preview and a defensive preview, so we'll hold off on that.
Yeah, or at least more in depth. I mean, there's no way that draft talk doesn't come up in this, but...
Well, I know Nick has some strong feelings about the rules changes, so we should probably let him speak his piece on this.
I read 0 rule changes. I'm unconcerned about rule changes.
Yeah, tell us how entertained you are about all the riveting topics coming out of the NFL owners meeting, Nick.
Number 0. I'm super pumped.
Man, you got to admit it's going to be cool, though. Someone posted, I think I saw it on Reddit, and it was Falcons jersey. It had the number 0, and the name on the back of the jersey said Rings. That is just
pretty
perfect.
gold. Yep. I do have a bone to pick with one of these rules because, or I'll just lead with what the rule is. Rule change. A launch, which is a personal foul 15-yard penalty, is now if a player leaves 1 or both feet. So before, a launch was if you leave both feet.
That's how it read? Both feet off the ground?
You're jumping into somebody with both feet with your head. Now it's 1 or both. I mean, we're talking about a situation where I think last year, the year before, there's never been more criticism on not the calls themselves, but just the overall quality of NFL officiating. And so we're taking a product in NFL officiating that is already subject to a lot of criticism, already a consensus problem.
I think the biggest issue...
we're making it harder on them.
Right. I think the biggest issue with the officiating was how they interpreted the judgment call rules.
Right.
And how vastly different they were called from game to game. You know, everyone saw the personal fouls called on Brady and then not on other quarterbacks, and how he seemed to get just regular tackles assessed as personal fouls, and, you know, it upset a lot of fans. And I think it's all valid. We saw it pop up in the championship games too, with, you know, the officiating in that game with the Bengals and Chiefs was a deciding factor in the last 3 minutes of that game, without a doubt.
Yeah. And
So I think that's what mostly the fans have had the biggest problem with. This is going to come down to that too. How do they interpret it? I don't necessarily think they did not call a personal foul if a defender had 1 foot on the ground this year, if they felt it was some sort of, targeting, launching type of foul in the secondary.
If it's egregious enough.
Yeah, so we'll see if this generates more personal foul calls or if it's just trying to clarify another difficult rule to interpret for the refs and making it, a bigger part of the story.
Max brought up a point earlier, and he mentioned that when they did the rule change for it being a personal foul for the running back or ball carrier to lower the crown of his helmet, how that wasn't really called. But here's where I think the distinction lies, is that yet again, we have another rule change where the NFL is looking to assist the offense. And you know that if, just like in the Super Bowl, if there's a way to keep that drive moving, can you imagine us
100%.
getting off the field on third down and Demario Davis is just being Demario Davis and decleats somebody with a normal tackle, and then all of a sudden a flag comes in from the free safety position, and the ruling on the field is that he launched with a foot in the air. And the other problem too with that is that, we thought maybe Sean Payton had some headway after the no call where PI was reviewable. This isn't
was a joke.
It was a joke, which means this isn't something that's going to be subject to review. You would think whether a guy launches off of 1 or both or none feet is reviewable, but you can't review penalties. So you're going to have a situation, it's going to happen in a game where a play of consequence is going to happen where they call this 1 foot launch rule on a guy that keeps an offense on the field. The offense wins the game. You're going to go back to replay and see that he tackled the guy with both feet on the ground. That situation is going to happen this year.
It could, but it's already happening so much. So I don't know how much, worse that's this interpretation of this
get
add-on.
much worse at this
We're
point.
dealing with this already.
I feel like we say that every year. It's not going to get worse, and then it gets worse.
Yeah. But with that said, with all these rule changes too, last year was a step back for offenses. Compared to the previous years, points per game, things like that were all down slightly from last year, from the previous years.
Okay.
So I agree with you. I think what they're doing is trying to continue to incentivize offenses because they feel that that's what brings in the viewership the most and generates the most money. So
it just seems to be like another situation where the defenders say, "I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know what's legal. I don't know."
Well, it's almost impossible to play defense in the NFL at this point.
Right. And they're making it worse.
But Nick touched on it, and the reality is offense sells tickets. The higher points totals, people love that. Most people would much rather watch a 45-42 shootout as opposed to a 9-6 slugfest.
I get that as an objective fan take, but I don't want to be watching Saints vs. Panthers this year and see Baker Mayfield have more time on the field.
Well, that'd be tough because Baker doesn't play for the Panthers.
I'm going to edit that shit out.
No, leave it in. That's good. Tell me more about Baker.
The Bucks that are trying to tank.
There
I don't want
it
to be
is.
watching Saints Bucks and see Baker Mayfield.
Do not edit this out, by the way.
Yeah, fine.
you're killing it.
I don't want to see him have more time on the field because DeMario is being DeMario, or
No, but they want to see
Marshawn Lattimore
Mahomes.
comes in. How many cornerback blitzes do you see? How many times does a cornerback come in on a cornerback blitz and have 2 feet on the ground when he tackles a quarterback? How is that possible?
I'm not going to get too concerned about this.
Yeah,
until
to
I
be
see
honest
it.
with you, I'm
I'm
not
pissed.
either.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm
I think
pissed.
you're overstating the significance of this rule change.
Talk-
Let's see it in action.
Talk to
and-
me about the overstating when we're watching a game and it.
Oh,
Totally
we will. We will.
Totally
And
screws us
we'll
over.
monitor this the whole season.
Yeah.
This is
Just like Baker Mayfield for the Panthers. I get it.
yeah, exactly.
He was so close to signing with him. It's just like, in that's where he is. But who cares? It's Baker. He's insignificant. No one's ever suffered any harm from Baker
They
before,
were not
right?
going to sign him back.
I'm going to reserve my comments about Baker. He won
Why?
me a little bit of.
Why are we reserving anything?
I guess we don't have to. We can talk about the bet if we want to. You want to bring that up and explain to the listeners?
I think you've already brought it up. But, I don't ever want to bring up that bet.
Love that bet.
You lucking out on him winning a playoff game.
I
is
don't
just
know about
insane.
luck, man. Gave you the double or nothing shot not to, but
Yeah, so
Gi-
I guess we'll
give us a little
I guess we'll
background
just
on what happened
Get
there.
into it. I can't stand Baker Mayfield. really at all. I think he's
You
terrible.
can't stand him so much you don't even know where he plays.
That's exactly it. I don't care about the guy. And, but this was back when he was 2 weeks removed from grabbing his crotch on national TV. And I was telling Max he's not a leader. And, I said wherever he get drafted, it doesn't matter because he's not going to be able to lead an NFL football team to anything. And then the bet came up.
So somehow you got it right and lost the bet.
Yeah,
so that's
pretty
impressive.
Pretty much. Max was like, bottle of whiskey that he wins an NFL playoff game. I was like, you think he's going to win an NFL playoff game? And no, he's not. He won't. And
newsflash, he did.
And then he did.
Yeah.
And but before that, Max gave me double or nothing that year.
Gave you the option.
Was it that year?
It
Either
was
way.
You can thank your fellow alum, Nick Chubb, for him winning a playoff game.
Yeah, I do have a fellow
You Georgia people really look out for each other.
dog to thank for that one. But yeah,
well.
that's our take on Baker, the new starting quarterback for the Panthers.
Or Tampa.
What happened?
He's a new starting quarterback in the NFC South.
I said that deliberately.
There we go.
But the point is, I just think, look, there's rule changes that are great, but it's just like every year. There's some rule change that just does not need to be there. It doesn't make the game safer.
Look, I think
to
with the
say
rule
1 versus
changes,
2.
let's let it play out. Let's see if it has an impact at all. My guess is it's going to be just like the targeting for the offensive player rule, where it just has not come into play at all, and everybody was freaking out about it, saying how is a running back going to be able to truck a defensive back anymore without getting called for this? And it hasn't been an issue at all. So
yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
It's also not surprising that they did not really enforce a new rule against offensive players. But anytime there's a new rule against the defense,
well, all we heard coming in was last 2 years was how they're going to up the amount of OPI calls, and you haven't seen any of that.
Exactly.
Again,
So it's all in what they decide to call or not call.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Let's let it play out, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, maybe I'll give it to Max that we'll see how it works. Maybe you're right on that, Max. I might concede just that once.
Alrighty. What you got for us next?
I mean, yeah, I don't think there's really many other rule changes to speak of. I know also what was brought up at the owners' meeting, or at least in relevant to Saints fans. All the coaches are there, so Dennis Allen gave an interview, and he talked about Mike Thomas. And I feel like talking about Mike Thomas to Saints fans is like talking about your mom. People just get really sensitive about it, And the question was posed, hey, I mean, people ask these questions thinking that the head coach is going to give them the answer that they want. Maybe they don't think he's going to give them the answer they want, but how's Mike doing? Is he going to be ready?
What was his exact quote on that?
I'm not going to be able to do it verbatim, but he said he's making progress in his recovery, essentially.
Well, that's all he's going to say right now.
And that he wanted to give himself the out of, look, is he ready to go out on the field at minicamp? We don't know that. But he ended it with, I have full confidence that he'll be ready to go when the season starts, essentially. So
I'll be honest with you. I don't want to see him in training camp. I don't want to see him in mini camp. I don't want to see him in OTAs. Wrap his ass in bubble wrap. Just go ahead and put him in a closet on Airline Highway and just break him out for the first week
He
of the
does need a
season.
little time with Carr. I mean,
You say that, but he didn't do anything last year in training camp, and all of a sudden 3 touchdowns in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it was with Jameis, and I mean, at least the best he looked was the second half, and especially the last drive in that Atlanta game, and that was with Jameis. And now there was video earlier in the offseason that year of him working out with Jameis and getting some reps with Jameis. So I agree with you to the extent that he's not in minicamp, he's not in
Man, he's
OTAs.
a pro. He'll be ready to roll.
I do want to see him in training camp with Carr. I kind of agree with Nick here. What do you think, Nick?
I think he's a receiver that, the accuracy matters and the timing matters. And if they are dialed in together, it can be something special. I think they need to be working together as much as possible. I don't think he needs to be taking on contact, playing in preseason games, any of that.
Yeah.
They need to be working together, figuring out the nuances.
Give him
of
the
each other.
red no contact jersey and
that's
let him
fine.
practice.
But he
Do
needs
not
to be
play
out
him in the
there.
preseason.
He needs to be running routes for Carr.
Yeah.
Carr needs to know where to put the ball where he likes it.
No, I agree with that.
He's the contested catch guy. It's going to come down to the placement of the ball and his catch radius. And if they don't get any time together going into the season, it's going to be a slow start for them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. They need time together. They need to be able to work on their timing, get the routes down. I mean,
Well, that's going to be the biggest thing because last year like training camp was very lax by all reports. DA did not run a Sean Payton like ship at all. It seemed like it was a very just, we're going to get it done, we'll show up and with all that. And they did not start off fast. So I think this year, you'll see DA
Sean
run
Payton
a
was
tighter
notorious
ship.
for slow starts, though.
Yeah, but Peyton's training camps, man, they were tough. And not only that, everybody was there for the OTAs. It's
kind of like the flip side of-
I think there's something to be said about that. Everybody was there for OTAs, but I don't know if Peyton was overly aggressive in camp and the beginning of the season. We seem to come out dead every year under Peyton.
It's interesting because he had the overly aggressive persona, right? Where I'm gonna put a full banner of myself looking at y'all that says "Do your job." Yeah. I mean, at the time, I remember being.
Oh, wait a minute! No, that was the year he was suspended, if I'm not mistaken, and they put it up.
But it's still like.
But then he's also dancing in the locker room. So like,
Fuck yeah, he was, man. I love Peyton.
it's great, but let's not act like it was some dictatorship like Parcells
that's
or
what I'm saying.
Belichick or
Like,
something.
you know who else had
no,
banners
no,
of
no,
themselves like Saddam Hussein?
I think you're confusing
and
dictatorship with accountability.
No.
He held people
the reality
accountable.
was Peyton was like every little detail went through him, man.
Right, dictatorship.
I don't
Yeah,
know,
that's
man.
fine. But
He's a
everybody knew who the boss was. They knew he was the
They
man.
did know
and
that
was it.
100%. He did that very well. But like to say he was,
Which, look, I was fine with whatever you want to call it, especially when we got to our first NFC Championship ever in 06 and we won the Super Bowl in 09 when we had the best looking team in the freaking league in 2011. If he's a dictator, if he was a
Whatever
supreme,
it was,
whatever,
it worked.
I'm fine.
he wasn't
Because
right.
Again,
Well, we're just
just like
comparing the way Allen approached
yeah.
it to how he could approach. To me, he was not that style of quarterback. He was very much a player's guy. He knew how to get the most out of him. He was very well respected. He held him accountable, no doubt. But it wasn't this like military style camp or
Yeah.
I don't know,
preparation.
man.
It wasn't
I think
like
there's
that.
there's some stories from the beat writers and all that talking about like the number of pins that are in a basket. Like he fucking would flip his lid if it wasn't the number he wanted. Like colors of things. It's just.
But
it was
that
attention
has
to
nothing
detail.
to do with like preparation and what we're talking about.
Well, it does have to do with preparation.
I mean, how many times did we start 0-4?
What's that?
How many times we started 0-4?
There are a few of those.
How many times
Was
we
it
lost the
2 or
first 2
3?
games of the season? I mean,
Few of those.
we were not quick starters. We were not ready to go at the beginning of the season.
I'll give
period.
Nick. I'll give
That
Nick
wasn't
this,
every
that
year though. That was a couple of them.
A
though.
lot.
Peyton wasn't known for his strong starts, except for with the exception of a few seasons.
But that's what he was great at. He would adjust. He would make fix the team the way he needed to, and we would always hit our stride.
Well, look at 2017. We started 0-2, I think, and then that was the game in London, and there was all the stuff about kneeling for the national anthem, and then boom, they took off from that point
and he
on.
was excellent at that. But I think like a having them ready to go day one, that was never really his thing.
Yeah, it's almost like a tale of two.
Other than the Super Bowl year, we started 13-0.
Tale of two coaches, but maybe Dennis Allen was too far on the other side. Where I think Peyton probably overworked him so much that maybe they had a more intense training camp than the season presented itself, and they had a slow start. And on the flip, Dennis Allen took things a little more easy, like Max said, and so they just weren't. I think we can all agree that there was not the fear of God factor, at least as fan. Again, like Nick said it last episode, we don't know anything. We're just speculating here. We're not inside the locker room, but it just from a fan's standpoint, it just seemed like Dennis Allen was not that guy that was instilling the fear of God in them, like Peyton was. And I know we've drifted a little bit far off Mike Thomas here, but I think it all goes back to, when you hear news like this in a freaking bubble like the owners' meeting.
Yeah, that's no
like
news.
The question for y'all is, are we worried about Mike Thomas?
No, not at all.
Okay. And I think that's the bottom
Nothing
line.
he said should make anybody worry about anything.
Yeah. So Mike Thomas segues into what I want to talk about next. We're talking right now, given that
We were debating this, so we wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, right now, who do we think on our roster, because we're pre-draft, we're in that second, third wave of free agency, who's our top 3 in the Saints right now?
We'll let Nick start with this one.
Top 3 players overall.
And they don't have to be in any order, but I mean...
No, it needs to be in order.
No, I think
Who's your number
we'll do
one?
it so we can
Actually,
debate.
start with number 3, go to number 2, and then go with number 1. Big unveil.
All right, I'm gonna say number 3.
Three's tough, man.
Pete Werner, Demario Davis, Marshawn Lattimore, all three defensive guys to me.
Pete Warner, number 3.
We're talking about for this year.
You're gonna have to explain yourself. I'm not saying he's not a good player, but tell me why. I mean,
Well, actually, hold on. Before he goes into it, give me your top.
Yeah, let's
three.
not defend it. Let's take all three, and then
Let's go all three, and then we'll debate it
and
after
we'll
that.
argue about it.
I mean, okay. So, number 3 is Derek
Baker
Carr.
Mayfield.
Okay.
Number 2,
Because remember, we're projecting for 2023.
right? So 3 is Derek Carr. I don't know that I'm as heavy on the defense in terms of top 3, so I'll keep going. But number 2 would be Michael Thomas.
Wow.
Peak Mike is peak Mike, and there's just no denying it. We all agreed he was going to be ready for the season. So he's 2. And then number 1, I think he's your anchor. He's your new Drew Brees. He is Demario Davis.
Wow. Okay. All right.
That is your
Okay.
most consistent, your leader.
We're not talking about what they've done, though. We're
No,
talking
yeah.
about for
Remember,
this
we're
year.
going projection for
Put
2023.
Demario number one player for the Saints this
I
year.
know what we're talking about.
Okay.
He keeps it centered.
Wow.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm actually going to go with Corey on my number 3. I'm going to project Derek Carr to have a huge year. I'm not, so I'm going to say he's my number 3. Number 2, man, this is tough. I'm going to throw, you know what? I'm throwing Kamara for number 2.
He was
He's
close.
not going to play all 17 games, but I think the
So for
let's
him to
call
be
it
the
11 games.
Second best player with only 11 games. If you're
Yeah,
signing
because I
up-
think
well,
the performance he's going to have, because now he's going to have a quarterback that can actually throw him a goddamn
he
screen
will throw him the ball,
pass.
a ton of them.
Yeah, because we've had the last couple of years where Jameis cannot throw a screen pass to save his life, and he's just been the forgotten guy. And now with Jamal Williams taking over the Mark Ingram hammer aspect of the running attack, I think you're going to see Kamara get back to the satellite back that he was before, where he's going to have, I see him having 800 yards rushing, 800 yards receiving, again, like he did in his first couple of years. And you're going to see him get up to, I think, somewhere between 12 and 16 touchdowns. Number 1, to me, is a no-brainer, Marshawn Lattimore. It's not even close. He, to me, is the best player on the team. Nick, you're his number 1 fan. How old is he now? What is he,
26
25,
this
26?
year, I think. About to turn 26, I think.
So he's 26, in the prime of his career, shut down cornerback when he plays. I mean, the guy is incredible.
Yeah, he to me is the counter to Mike Thomas in terms of when he's peak. He was injured a lot last year, and I don't think we got to see the full.
That was a
Marshawn
weird injury
for the whole year.
That's a rare injury too. That's not something you see very often.
But right, you're right, Max. When he's on, he's
Well, I
he's a
like
lock-
it
he's a
though. Our list were all kind of a hybrid of each
Sure.
other. You know what I mean?
And I think it also lends to the fact, it's like the debate that happens every year with the MVP voting. Like you hear guys on ESPN or even local radio debate about, but who's the most valuable player? We're talking about best, right? So we might have all varying definitions of the word best, but I think that lends into how we arrive at the players we arrived at the top 3. I think for me, DeMario being number 1 is a mix of value and talent to get to best. If you want to say who's the most valuable player on the defense, it's
he's the biggest leader
not to say DeMario.
It is.
Well,
he's the biggest leader
of
on
the
the team, for
Right.
sure.
But I also think he, unlike some other valuable players, in the true sense of the word valuable, I do still think, even though he's, people bring up his age and whatnot. I mean, he's such a baller.
Look, he is.
He complements it with his ability.
But look, and it kills me not to have DeMario or Cam in the top 3. But again, we're projecting 2023 season. And, as much as it pains me to say it, there was a little bit of it's not a drop off because it wasn't that pronounced, but it was more of like just a tapering off in the 2 of them. their performances. And look, they're both 34 years old, I believe, for this coming season, and that's to be expected when you've been playing at a high level for as many years as those guys have. Father Time catches up with everybody at some point.
Yeah.
And
for
those two are the leaders of the team,
Yeah.
no doubt. But I would, DeMario, I'd probably put it 4 if we would have gone top 5.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't want to.
I do agree with
All-Pro.
Nick. I think Pete Warner's
I was just about to say, I don't want to let Nick get away with that so quickly. Pete Warner, top
Warner's
3.
awesome, dude. He is. I agree with Nick.
I can tell you
1,000.
right now, he was absolutely going to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, he was all pro.
He had all pro
Yeah,
potential
yeah.
with his before that ankle.
Agree.
I mean,
agree.
the way that guy was playing was out of control.
Sometimes
I
we
mean,
can be prisoners of the moment, and we forget.
that was a lot of games to say prisoner of the moment. I mean,
No,
it
no,
was 10
no. I'm saying like we can be prisoners of the moment for the moment when he was not playing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when a guy who was not.
The truth is, I'm the biggest Mario fan on the planet.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with you picking him 1. If he plays like last year, you may consider him the best player, even at last year's pace.
Yeah.
But when they were both on the field together, the one who was shining was Warner.
Yeah.
Until he went out and DeMario took back over, that was the guy making the impact plays.
And you know what else, though? I think Caden Ellis coming in and going on that tear over that stretch when Warner was hurt kind of overshadowed what Warner had done leading up to that point. But let's be honest. Caden Ellis came in, I think he had 7 sacks last year and was honestly crushing
He overplayed his
offenses.
potential, for sure.
I mean,
Well, we'll see. They paid him, so we'll see.
Look, they paid him, so we'll see. But I think that kind of made people forget a little bit about what Pete Warner had done that season. Warner was the best player on the defense for a
he was
good-
leading the NFL in tackles the week
Yeah.
before he got hurt.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
He was the best player on the defense for most of the first
Yeah.
half of the season.
So yes, it's projecting more than it is off of what we know we have in
it's like
DeMario. but
your definition of best is more of a projection
Yeah.
versus value. Or
well, I feel he
ability.
was the best defensive player we had the first 10 games.
Well,
of
how
the
old is
season.
Warner? We talked
23.
about he's
23 years
old.
old.
Jesus Christ.
I thought it would have been like 25, but
So he's
I haven't checked it.
Look,
and
man,
we can make the health argument. He put Kamara in. Where does you put in Michael
and look,
Thomas?
I'm projecting with Kamara.
P. Werner got hurt again 2 years in a row. So
Yeah.
you're also assuming that won't happen.
Well,
I mean, I really.
Kamara was hurt and he's going to be
Yeah,
suspended. We'll see where that goes. Michael Thomas hadn't played in 3 years, so that's a pretty bold pick by you. Top 3. He's got
Mike
600
Mike,
yards
man.
in 3 seasons. I agree with you when he plays, but now he's 30, coming off 3 straight,
if he's-
injury-plagued seasons.
He's 30. He's like 28 in NFL years. So he
Yeah,
hasn't played
you-
for so long.
and let me say this. I think Derek Carr.
I want him to be top 3, 100%.
Right.
That
No, that's
means
a great
great
sign
things
if
for
Corey's
us.
number
Yes.
3. Or 1, 2, or 3. But I think Corey, you're probably on the same page with this. In that I think Carr has a chip on his shoulder, and he's out to prove the naysayers wrong. And honestly, surrounded as of right now, having Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, Juwan Johnson, Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, Taysom Hill.
The fact that you're still naming names right now
That's
shows
a
you
hell
how.
of a lineup to surround him with. And I'll be honest with you, man. I think Carr is going to have a great year. I think he's going to really put up some numbers, and people are going to, they're going to understand that this guy is a bona fide top 5 QB in the NFC, no
Yeah,
doubt.
and I think there's something to be said about the fact that you could objectively say that he has what he needs around him. Because how many times do we hear, writers or personalities wanting to promote the chip on the shoulder guy?
Yeah.
Where he's got a chip on his shoulder, he's gonna bring it with everything he has. Baker Mayfield's gonna win a playoff game. Well, he won the one that Max needed, but.
Win's a win, my friend.
Derek Carr could have easily used the chip on his shoulder thing last year with Las Vegas, but the reality was he did not have.
Well, he was coming off a great year.
But still, he could have said, "Great year," but I didn't get to where I wanted to go, which was multiple playoff.
Yeah, but
wins.
you get a different chip when you get benched.
My point is, it's one thing for us to say Derek
Got
Carr's
cut.
gonna have a chip on his shoulder, but it's another thing to say he's got a chip on his shoulder, and here's objectively why he can do something with it, and it's
Yeah.
because of all the names you just mentioned. So that's why I feel good about
I think
that.
the more important names than even that is that front 5 staying healthy. Because if you keep
Well,
him
that's a
standing,
question mark, though.
he's gotten it done with people you've never heard of in his career.
Yeah.
I'm not that worried about him if you can keep him standing up. If they protect him, with Kamara back there taking pressure up, he's going to check the ball down a lot. He does it a lot. He does it just like Drew did. He's going to use all that. If you give him time to hit stuff downfield, the guy's going to succeed.
He is kind of the anti-Jameis in that respect. Everything.
He's not going to jam it in there very often.
Jameis
He's pretty protective of the ball.
I love Jameis as the person, the personality he brought to the locker room, his deep threat, and he had the strongest arm we'd seen at the Saints back QB in a long time. But he definitely turned down a lot of intermediaries and a lot of checkdowns. That not just like dump it off just to dump it off, but
for 12 yards
they would have helped. And I think you're right. Carr's definitely going to.
Well, the short game is the opposite of what Jameis is good at.
Yeah.
He's great with chucking it deep. He's a bombs away kind of guy, but when you're talking about checking it down, he's not doing it.
Agreed.
Who else? Who else on the list? You have a problem with any of Max's picks? You okay with
Name your
Kamara in that top 3?
Well, I was going to say with Kamara,
he hadn't been top 3 on the team in 3 years either.
It's been a minute. The last 2 years he has not been.
Kamara's got
But the year before, absolutely was a top 3 guy.
you can't deny.
Breeze was still here that year.
I'm banking on a comeback on Kamara.
He has a little bit of what we talked about last time that Reggie brings to the table, where even if his stats aren't prolific,
He scares the defenses.
He's a game plan black hole for the other team.
I'm not knocking him. I'm saying top 3.
Projecting this year, yes.
Yeah. You're
And
saying
he has to-
2023, minus 6 games, top 3 player.
But to
on
be
the
a top 3, well, like Max says, he's one of the guys you hope that he's top 3 because
100%.
if he does become your top 3 player when you do your postmortem of
Changes
the
the
whole
offense.
year,
Yep.
that means he will have had to have balled out
Yeah,
in the second half of the year.
I think with an actual running mate in the backfield in Jamal Williams, like you're not going to see Carmichael jam Kamara straight into the line, 20 times a game and just hope for the best.
Yeah.
I think now you're going to see him utilized more as a receiver. He's going to break some big plays. And I think, look, I see him having about 8 receiving touchdowns. And I think another 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns.
A lot for the second. But I will say this. There is one thing, kind of like there's 2 things out of this top 3. I absolutely want to see at least 8 games with DeMario and Warner as our 2 linebackers. But the other thing I want to see, it probably won't happen until the second half of the year because of Kamara's impending. I'll be shocked if there's no 6 or 8 game suspension. But I really want to see a touchdown celebration with Kamara and Jamal Williams. I mean, those guys together.
Pokemon themed celebration.
I really hope they mesh. They get along. I mean, you never know, but the boom and zoom was one of the most fun things as a fan to watch with Ingram and Kamara. But like, Kamara's already kind of out there as a personality, and then you've got an even drastically further out there personality in Jamal Williams. I just want to see them celebrate together in the end zone.
It's going to be fun.
Trying to think. This is a yes or no, but talk about with DeMario and Warner rolling out there. We only roll out 2 linebackers at a time.
Yeah.
Generally, yeah.
They roll with nickel for the most part.
But together,
Well, they do like the 3 safety nickel.
Together, could they be pound for pound? Call it, since there's 2, not 4. Could they be one of the best groups of linebackers, pound for pound?
In the league, you mean?
And dare we say, could they be Dome Patrol light at their
we're
best?
not going there. There was 4 of them. We're not going there.
We're not going to go there.
No, but that's
I
what
get
I'm
you
Hall of
like
Famers
1 or
on
2
that.
years old at this point, but the Dome
You-
Patrol was a different
There's
beast.
2 Hall of Famers and 2 borderline Hall of Famers
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
Dome Patrol.
Warner was looking at being an All-Pro. And
Hold on.
All Pro and Hall of Fame are different things.
Here's the thing.
But if he's 23,
we'll talk
multiple-
about this in a different episode, but the Dome Patrol, 1992 Dome Patrol, you would have been what, 6, 7? How old would you have been in 92?
I would have been, I think, about 35, 92.
He's been 35 for 35 years.
Yeah.
That's a stock answer. But, okay,
No, the
so
reality is that 92 Dome Patrol linebacking core is the absolute best linebacking core ever on a field or a team together in NFL
Yeah.
history.
I don't think you
look,
compare it to that.
I
You
did-
can't compare it to
I
that.
said light. I said
No.
light.
No.
No, I don't think you can.
No.
0 calorie?
0.
0. Not a chance. Not
DeMario's
remotely close.
career isn't as good as 3 of those guys' careers.
All right.
Yeah.
So, and DeMario's incredible. That's how good those three guys were.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, look, I threw it out there. Anyway, so I
We
think
threw it back at you. So
you did. You referenced my birth year, I believe, which is really good.
I was making sure you were alive to see
really
that.
good sports fact checking there.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I think we hit some good topics here. The top three is interesting. I mean, last chance. Does anybody want to change any of their top three? Stand by them.
Nah, man, I'm rolling with it.
No. Okay, let's. Our biggest question mark of our top three. Mine's obviously Warner and yours, eyes. Max is Kamara.
Yeah.
I think the biggest question mark.
What about
is
Corey's?
Michael Thomas, easy.
Mike Thomas.
Yeah.
So we'll bring this up later.
Yeah.
We'll mark this down.
We'll
and we'll
revisit.
reassess it.
We're also going to revisit those horrible rule changes too.
And Baker Mayfield 12 more times.
Carolina Panthers,
Carolina
great.
Panthers, starting quarterback.
Carolina, great.
All right. Thanks for listening to the second episode of 28 to 3 podcast with Nick, Max, and Corey.